Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys checking out today's video. We're going to be talking about how to fish lily pads and other types of shallow vegetation in today's video. There's a lot of this type of cover in lakes across the country. Not all of them have it in there, but I'm going to say that probably 30-40% of the lakes across the country have some type of shallow emergent vegetation, whether it be lily pads, gator grass, water willows, that, cattails, reeds, that type of deal. So we're going to certainly give you guys a well-rounded tip on that in today's video. Also, guys, real quick, a reminder, anybody interested in getting their spring tackle stocked up on, I'll put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description. Man, they got everything you could possibly need there at Tackle Warehouse, guys. Good way to support the channel by using that link. And also, please check out my Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns that are in the link too. Really appreciate that. Okay, lily pads, another type of cover. Let's sort of break this down a little bit into some of the most common cover. Now, I'm not talking about like Florida water in today's video, because Florida is like nothing but grass and lily pads, so that's a unique situation. What I'm talking about are like the man-made impoundments that have lily pads. Some places like Ross Barnett in Mississippi, maybe even some places on the TVA lakes like Lake Wheeler. Even we have gator grass and water willows all over the Ozarks here. When the water's up high, Grand Lake in Oklahoma, it's got a lot of that shallow emergent vegetation. So this is great bass cover. Now, one thing about that is the cover that you have on there, a lot of it is how you fish it is depending upon the water depth in that particular cover, and it can be situational. So say, for example, if you have a lake like Lake Eufaula in Alabama or Grand Lake in Oklahoma that has that floating gator grass or water willows in it, how the fish use that are totally dependent upon the water level, because a lot of times there's not enough water in there. Like for example, at Grand Lake, occasionally we'll get those water willows, and if the water's not 3 or 4 feet over normal, there's no water in them. So it's water level dependent. But once you do have enough water in those areas, they're going to hold a lot of fish. So the first thing about that, let's talk about lily pads, and then we're going to talk about the other shallow type of grasses. One thing that you're going to notice about this is they work a lot better if the water's warmer. Lily pads, you can catch fish on them in cooler water. A lot of times, like if they haven't bloomed out yet, they've just got the old stems sticking in the water. I've caught a ton of fish on those in a little bit cooler water. But other than that, it's pretty much a warmer water technique. Warmer water, definitely gets more fish up in there. Now, let's talk about lily pads first, some of the different ways to fish it. There's 2 different seasons for lilies. The first season is before the lilies actually bloom out and have the pads formed, and then after. Now, most of the time they don't start getting their actual pads, their round pads on there, until about May or so. They start out, they just got a stem sticking up in the water. And this is a great place to fish, guys, in the pre-spawn when the water temperature's in the 50s. When the water's in the 50s and you still have those stems sticking out, guys, I have caught a bunch of big ones in that. Spinnerbait and a chatterbait's all you need. Just run a spinnerbait, run a chatterbait through there. It can be some of the funnest fishing that you'll ever see. I mean, I've whacked some big ones doing that. So if you ever get in that situation, like in March and April when you just got the stems, pull out that chatterbait, and sometimes a swim jig will work too in that same situation. Now, once the pads start forming, you've got several different type of pads. You have some that are like the little dollar pads. You've got some pads that are flat on the surface, and you got some pads that the stems come out of the surface, and the pad may be a foot or 2 above the water, above the air. So there's several different types of pads in there. My favorite type of pads to fish are the ones where the pad actually is out of the water. It seems like to me I catch more fish and bigger fish in that. If you're fishing the type of areas that have the little round pads or pads flat on the surface, those can be really good areas for topwater lures. Like a frog or some type of a buzz toad can be really good. You can catch a few fish flipping and pitching around it, but it seems like when you've got the flat pads, that's when I can catch them, on those surface baits around there. Sometimes a swim jig if it's not too thick or anything. But my favorite type of pad fishing by far, guys, is fishing those big pad fields where the pads are sticking out of the water. This is a strictly pitching and flipping type of a deal. I fish a lot of different type of baits in there: jigs, creature baits, plastic worms. It really just depends on what the fish want. You just sort of have to let them tell you about that. But sorry, I thought I had sneezed there for a second. But the main thing is just be real slow and methodical, and determine if the fish are on the edge of the pads or back in the pads. Now, sometimes if you have these big, vast pad fills, you actually have to get back in there further and pitch and flip around there. But for the most part, the best success I've had fishing lily pads have been where my boat's right on the edge of the pad field and I'm pitching and flipping 5, 10, maybe 15 foot back into the pads. Super fun way to catch them. You will lose a lot of fish in lily pads, guys. I probably have lost more bass in lily pads than any other type of cover. It's just the nature of it. You're going to lose fish in there with it, so that's part of it. Now, another thing with a lily pad that you need to remember is lily pads have roots on them, and a lot of times the stems of those pads, just because the pad sticks up like right here, the root could be maybe 2 or 3 feet away from actually where the stem is. So if you have some isolated pads, make sure that you pitch and flip even away from the pad, like 2 or 3 feet away from it, because you want to try to get down there at the base of that root. That's where those fish are going to be. And it seems like pad fishing is always better on sunny days. The pads provide great shade, good to fish in a sunny day situation. Now, the other type of grass, again, is water level dependent. If you don't have like, 1.5 foot or 2 foot of water in those particular areas, you're not going to catch many fish. But if you have gator grass or water willows in 2, 3, 4 foot of water, it can be just some absolutely fantastic fishing. Now, the water willows are those little bitty, they look like little bitty tiny willow trees that are sticking up. I've caught a ton of fish on a swim jig in that situation. Swim jig can be really good. Buzz bait around the edge of them, pitching and flipping back in them a little bit. And the gator grass for me is strictly pitching and flipping. I love fishing gator grass. And if you've never seen it, it's like a vine that grows across the water and floats on the surface. And I've caught so many fish, guys, flipping creature baits and tubes. Tube is a really good bait around gator grass. Great shallow water structure. Another thing about that is you need to have some type of proximity to deeper water relative to the area. Now, some of those areas, they can be way back up on a flat and there's just no deep water anywhere around it. But I like to be on the edge of some water willows or gator grass where I may have 5 or 6 foot of water, 10 or 15 feet away from me. That's the best areas for those fish to move up in. And finally, I've always done better on water willows, pads and everything in like a creek arm. It's like I haven't done as well on the main lake, but I like to get back in those creek arms and look for those type of areas, and can be just some fantastic fishing. So anyway, guys, hope it helps you out. We'll talk later.